At graduation, I finally mustered up the courage to confess to my crush. But, as fate would have it, I got hit by a car. When I woke up, my crush stood right in front of me, staring at me coldly. You're awake? Great, let's discuss the divorce agreement. Me? I haven't even confessed yet. How did this turn into a divorce? At my graduation ceremony, I finally summoned the courage to confess to Zachary Warren, my longtime crush. On the other side of the crosswalk, Zach was standing there, looking sharp in his graduation gown, taking photos. I got so excited that I dashed toward him, completely missing the fact that the light was red. There was a loud crash. I was hit by a car, and everything went black. The next time I opened my eyes, the first thing I saw was the blinding white ceiling. And there he was, Zach, standing by my hospital bed, still as handsome as ever. This might be the first time we've been this close. Zach was looking up at the four-drip, but his gaze slowly shifted to my face. I accidentally noticed the ring on his left hand. I've had a crush on him for so long. So, he's already taken? Suppressing the bitterness in my heart, I forced a smile and greeted him. Zach, what are you doing here? As I tried to sit up, I noticed that my arm was wrapped in thick bandages. The next second, Zach sat on the chair beside my bed, his voice cold and distant. Jennifer, you've really mastered the art of manipulation. Risking your life just to push for a divorce? I stared at Zach, completely confused. What is he talking about? Divorce? I haven't even graduated yet, let alone gotten married. Where's this divorce thing coming from? Just then, a nurse came into the room, holding a tray for bandaging wounds. Dr. Williams, you're still here? Miss Niles, you don't realize how lucky you are. You were hit by a car, but thankfully Dr. Williams happened to be nearby. He gave you emergency care right away. Otherwise, it wouldn't just be a broken arm you're dealing with. The nurse bent down and carefully disinfected my wound. After she rested my hand on the side of the bed, I noticed I was also wearing a ring on my right hand, and it matched Zach's ring. A couple's ring. A wave of fear and uncertainty washed over me. After the nurse left, I grabbed Zach's sleeve in a panic. Zach, you graduated from NYU Medical School in 2018, right? He frowned, clearly annoyed. He shook my hand off and looked at me coldly. Since you're awake, let's go over the divorce agreement. This is absolutely ridiculous. I was on my way to graduation, got hit by a car, and now I'm being accused of faking an accident to force a divorce from Zach. Either I've lost my mind, or Zach has. Wait, Zach. Before I could finish, a little kid suddenly ran into the room, jumping right into Zach's arms. Me? Wow, this kid is so adorable. I reached out with my good arm to pinch his cheek, but he immediately hid behind Zach, clearly scared. Sorry, little guy, you're just too cute. I couldn't help myself. Zach shot me a disapproving look. It suddenly hit me that I hadn't even gotten to the main point. Zach, this might sound crazy, but I don't remember anything you're talking about. All I recall is being on my way to the graduation ceremony. Before I could finish, Zach cut me off impatiently. So, you're telling me you've lost your memory? Amnesia? Yes, that must be it. Amnesia is the only explanation for why I don't remember any of this. I nodded sincerely. Zach's icy expression didn't soften. He pulled a document from his bag and tossed it onto my lap. This is the divorce agreement. The terms are exactly as you requested. If you have no objections, just sign it. I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came out. The little boy in Zach's arms looked sad, his lips trembling. Zach, shouldn't we avoid discussing such topics in front of a child? It's not good for his emotional well-being. How considerate of you, Jennifer, Zach sneered. That's our child. And yet, when you were having dinner with another man, did you ever think about how that might affect his emotional well-being? I hadn't even processed his first sentence when the second one hit me like a ton of bricks. I stared at the little boy in disbelief. So, I didn't just get married, I have a child too? But the little guy paid no attention to me. He buried his face in Zach's neck, refusing to even look my way. Too much information. My brain couldn't handle it. I was officially out of commission. It took me a whole day to wrap my head around everything. It seems I really did lose my memory. I'm still me, and Zach is still Zach. The only difference is we're married, and we have a kid. But that divorce agreement sitting on the bed speaks volumes. There's clearly a problem with our marriage. The problem is, did I cheat? No way, right? Why would I cheat on Zach? He's good-looking and smart. I must have been crazy. So, what went wrong? How can I get my memory back? I scratched my head, completely frustrated. Mommy. A tiny voice came from the door. I looked up to see a small face peeking through the slightly open door. Daddy said you need to disinfect your hand. Here's the iodine. He said you should do it yourself. The little boy held a bottle tightly in his tiny hands. I gestured for him to come closer. Mommy's hand hurts. Can you bring it over for me? The boy hesitated for a moment but eventually nodded and shuffled over to the bed, placing the iodine on the bedside table. I pulled him onto my lap and studied his features. His eyes were big and round like mine, his nose straight like Zach's, and his face, a perfect combination of both of us. This was our son. I couldn't resist hugging him tight and planting a big kiss on his cheek. He smelled so sweet and innocent, absolutely irresistible. When I looked up, his face was bright red. He froze for a moment before wrapping his little arms around my neck and hugging me back tightly. He leaned in and whispered in my ear, "Mommy, you smell nice. This little guy is the sweetest thing ever." As I basked in the joy of my son's affection, the door opened again. Zach entered, his familiar presence filling the room. "Daddy." The little boy immediately ran to Zach and held his arms out, waiting for him to pick him up. Zach had just showered, wearing casual loungewear, looking effortlessly sexy and relaxed. His hair was still slightly damp, with droplets running down his neck and disappearing into his collar. I swallowed. This man was dangerously attractive. As he came closer, my heart started racing. But then Zach's words shattered my moment of bliss. "Jennifer, don't you think it's a little late to start being a good mom to Cooper?" I didn't mean to. I tried to explain, but the look on Zach's face told me he wouldn't believe a word I said. So, I stayed silent. Whatever. Do what you need to do. I'm heading out. As I left the study, Cooper peeked out from Zach's neck and gave me a glance. Watching the two of them so close, a wave of sadness washed over me. What good are a husband and child if my husband doesn't love me? Even my son seems closer to him. I started questioning everything. Why did we get married in the first place? Why did we have a child? Outside, the full moon hung high in the sky. The night breeze blew through the balcony, scattering my emotions. Nothing has changed. Except for me. The master bedroom had only one large bed. The entire room was decorated in a minimalist black, white, and gray palette. Apart from that, it was immaculately tidy, with a light scent of gardenias floating in the air. I recognized it instantly. It was my favorite fragrance. I headed to the walk-in closet, looking for my pajamas, but all I saw was a row of black clothes, and they were all men's clothing. I had no choice but to knock on the door of Zach's study. Honey, sorry to bother you. Zach looked up from his laptop, adjusting his gold-rimmed glasses. His whole demeanor was both tempting and distant. Do you know where my pajamas are? I looked through the closet in the master bedroom but couldn't find them. Zach stared at me for a few seconds without saying a word. Just as I was about to give up and leave, he suddenly stood up and walked toward me. He towered over me, standing at 6'1" while I barely reached 5'5". I felt like a child standing in front of him. Zach smirked, slipping his hands into his pockets. So, are you planning to carry on with this amnesia act? I gulped, unsure of what to say. The truth was, even if I told him the truth, he wouldn't believe me. Thankfully, he didn't make things difficult this time. He walked past me, heading toward another part of the house. I stood there, confused and not sure what to do next. He glanced back at me from the corner of his eye. Well, aren't you coming? I immediately followed him, keeping a safe distance. Thanks. 2 minutes later, I eagerly opened the closet door in the guest bedroom to grab my pajamas. But the moment I saw what was inside, I slammed the door shut, my face flushed with embarrassment. Oh my God, this is... I didn't even finish my sentence, but I knew Zach understood. He stood by the door, arms crossed, silently watching me with a look that said, "Keep going, I'm just here to watch the show." Taking a deep breath, I slowly reopened the closet door. Inside were outfits so revealing. They looked like they belonged on a nightclub dancer. Tiny scraps of fabric, there was hardly anything to cover up with. Was this how I dressed after graduation? I mean, after I got married? Had my style become this, provocative? To make things worse, Zach didn't seem to have any intention of leaving. I ignored his piercing gaze and continued searching through the clothes. But I couldn't find anything even remotely normal. I sighed inwardly and, for some reason, turned to Zach and asked, "Honey, which one do you like seeing me in?" His eyes immediately darkened, and without a word, he turned and walked out of the room. The door slammed shut behind him, and the sound made me jump. Why did he get mad? They say women are hard to understand, but men are even more of a mystery. I grabbed some pajamas and headed to the bathroom. A wild thought crossed my mind. Could our impending divorce have something to do with issues in the bedroom? After my shower, I wrapped myself in a robe and headed to Cooper's room. The nursery was cozy, and it was clear Zach had put a lot of thought into it. Everything was designed with care. I tiptoed over to his bed. Cooper was fast asleep, clutching a little stuffed animal. I gently tucked the blanket around him and wiped his thumb, which he had been sucking on. For the first time, I felt a real connection to being a mother, but I still didn't know how old he was. I looked over at our marriage certificate. It was dated 4 years ago. That meant Cooper must be around 3. I ruffled his hair and quietly left the room. Just as I closed the door, I turned around and saw Zach standing right in front of me. We were so close that if I looked up, I could bump into his chin. My back pressed against the door, and Zach didn't seem to realize or care that he was invading my personal space. My heart raced so fast, I thought it might leap out of my chest any second. "Are you done?" "Yeah." The air was thick with awkwardness. I had no idea what to say next. "So, are you going to bed now?" Zach didn't respond or make a move. I tightened the robe around me, making sure he couldn't see the revealing pajamas underneath. "Okay, I'll go to sleep first, then." I stepped aside and practically bolted to the master bedroom. Without a second thought, I jumped into bed, pulled the covers over me, and lay still. Moments later, the bedroom door opened, and Zach walked in. He paused when he saw me lying in bed, seeming a little surprised. He stood there, just staring at me. His gaze made my scalp tingle. "Honey, which side do you usually sleep on?" No answer. Has Zach always been this strange? He's so quiet, always just staring coldly, without saying a word. Frustrated, I got out of bed and stood by the side. "You pick first." Zach finally moved. He walked to the other side, lay down, and shut off the bedside lamp with a loud click.